When you hear the word Vikings, it's so easy to think about the great men who raided Europe and achieved some of the greatest feats in human history. But did you know that there are some legendary female Vikings who are just as powerful? Women who made the heads of kings turn and led armies to unexpected victories. Who were these women, and are their stories actually true? Stick along with me and I might just show you. The last one is a shocker. Most people don't realize that female Vikings were a thing, because we usually hear about the men in Norse mythology, but the evidence we have today points to the fact that on those battlefields, it wasn't only the men who fought and did great things. The women were also great actors in the victories the Vikings achieved. Some of the women are even feared more than the great Viking kings you already know about. And here they are. First, the Shield Maidens. For a long time there was a debate on whether the Shield Maidens were real or were just creations of an imaginative mind. But in 2017, DNA tests performed on a body found in a famous Viking grave at Birka showed it was actually a woman, possibly solving the debate. But the Shield Maidens weren't just one person. They were actually a group of strong women who fought beside the men in some of the greatest Viking battles. They actually fought in great battles like the Battle of Bråvalla and the Siege of Dorostollen. And although they lost in the Siege of Dorostollen, their bravery and strength still inspire me today. Next up, Sigrid the Haughty. Sigrid the Haughty truly lived up to her name as a powerful and fierce woman. She was the widow of King Eirik the Victorious of Sweden, and when he died, she inherited a lot of land and power. After her son became king, many men started proposing to her, not because they loved her, but because they wanted her wealth and power. Sigrid quickly realized this and decided to teach them a lesson. Her foster brother Harald and another suitor named Visavold were the first to regret proposing. To stop others from trying to marry her for her money, she burned both men alive in the middle of a grand feast, right in the Great Hall, so everyone would know what happens when you try to take advantage of her. This bold and brutal act is how she earned the name Sigrid the Haughty. If burning two suitors alive wasn't enough to make men think twice, Sigrid the Haughty had an even more crazy plan up her sleeve. The next man to ask her for her hand was Olav Tryggvason, the king of Norway. It's either Olav had no idea of Sigrid's reputation, or he was too confident in his own abilities. He agreed to marry her, but only if she first converted to Christianity. Sigrid refused, saying she wouldn't follow any religion that wasn't practiced by her ancestors. In response, Olaf angrily slapped her with a glove. Sigrid didn't lose her cool. Instead, she calmly told him, "This will one day be the death of you." And just like that, Sigrid set her mind on destroying him. True to her word, she eventually helped bring about Olaf's downfall, proving once again that Sigrid was not one to mess with. After Olaf struck Sigrid, she wasn't the kind of person to just let it go. She teamed up with powerful leaders including the King of Denmark, Svein Forkbeard, and even married him, one of Olaf's longtime enemies. This alliance only made things worse for Olaf, adding to the tension. Forkbeard had forced his sister Tyri into an unwanted marriage. Upset by this, Tyri ran away and married Olaf, urging him to get revenge for the forced marriage. With both Sigrid and Forkbeard holding grudges against Olaf and Tyri pushing for retribution, things quickly escalated into a full-blown war. The final showdown, known as the Battle of Svold, became the largest naval battle in Viking history. Ambushed at sea by the kings of Denmark, Sweden, and a Norwegian jarl, Olaf, seeing no way out, threw himself overboard. This battle decided the future of Norway and proved that Sigrid was not someone you should mess with. Nor was the next person on this list Olga of Kiev. Olga of Kiev, also known as Saint Olga, was a real person in human history, although some of the stories about her would sound like mere fables. After the death of her husband, Olga ruled as regent for her son until he was ready to take the throne. She was known for her bold decisions and great actions, which made her one of the most legendary women in Viking history. Olga was married to Igor of Kiev, who was known for being greedy. His greed led to his death at the hands of the Drevlian tribe. After killing Igor, the Drevlians tried to get Olga to marry their prince, Mai, to gain control of her land. But Olga wasn't interested in marrying him. She was only focused on getting revenge for her husband's death. And that was just what she did. Olga's revenge was both clever and brutal. First, she asked the Drevlians to send their messengers to her. Pretending to honor them, she had them carried in a boat to her palace, but when they arrived, she had them thrown into a pit and buried alive. Next, she asked the Drevlians to send their wisest men to her palace. After inviting them to relax in the bathhouse, she set the building on fire and burned them all alive. Still not satisfied, Olga asked the Drevlians to host a grand funeral feast for her husband Igor. Once everyone was drunk, she gave the signal to her soldiers to kill all the guests. But her final act of revenge was even more creative. She surrounded the city of Iskorostin, where Igor had been killed, but couldn't take it by force. So she asked for a simple gift: 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each home. When she received them, she tied burning sulfur to their claws and released them. The birds flew back to their nests, and the entire city was soon on fire. Those who survived were either killed or sold into slavery, but Olga spared a few so they could continue to pay her tribute. Her acts of revenge made her one of the most legendary figures in history. Another legendary female warrior in Viking history is Lagertha. Lagertha is recognized by some as the wife of Ragnar Lothbrok, as played by Catherine Winnick in the show Vikings, but the true story of her life is quite different from what we saw in that movie. According to Saxo, Lagertha's tale begins when the Swedish king, Fro, invaded Norway and killed the king, who was Ragnar's grandfather. To further insult the family, Fro forced the women of the royal family to work in a brothel. When Ragnar heard about this, he was furious. He raised an army to seek revenge, and many women Fro had mistreated, including Lagertha, fought alongside him. Leading these great female warriors was Lagertha, whose strength and skill surprised everyone. Although she wore men's clothing, her long golden hair, however, made it easy to know that she was a woman. Lagertha and the other female warriors offered to help Ragnar Lothbrok to get revenge for his grandfather's death. She rushed into the battlefield, fiercely killed many enemies, and played a huge part in the victory. Lagertha's bravery and skills left Ragnar in awe, so much that he wanted to marry her. But Lagertha wasn't eager to settle down. When Ragnar came in to win her hand, she had set a bear and a hound to guard her home. Ragnar, determined to marry her, fought off both animals, spearing the bear and strangling the hound. He eventually won Lagertha's hand in marriage, but their story wasn't exactly the happily ever after type. Even though Lagertha and Ragnar had a son and 2 daughters together, Ragnar eventually divorced her when he returned to Denmark. Apparently, he was still upset that she had both set a bear and a hound on him when he first tried to win her hand in marriage. They both went on to remarry, with Lagertha staying in Norway. But their story didn't end there. When a civil war broke out, Ragnar needed help and asked Norway for support. Lagertha didn't just send him 120 ships. When Ragnar's army was in trouble, she led a surprise counterattack that saved the day, turning the battle in Ragnar's favor. After returning to Norway, victorious from the war she practically won on her own, Lagertha had a disagreement with her second husband. Believing that she could rule on her own, she stabbed him with the head of a spear she had hidden under her dress and took control of his lands and title, becoming the sole ruler of Norway. The last one on the list is a woman with a difference, Freydis Eiriksdottir. For many reasons, Freydis Eiriksdottir is one of the most famous female Viking warriors in Viking history. Unlike the Shield Maidens and Lagertha, Freydis fought against many, even without the help of male warriors. In fact, she showed incredible courage even when her male counterparts fled. Freydis and her Viking group landed on the shores of the eastern coast of North America with plans to settle there. But almost after setting up camp, they had some unexpected guests. They were attacked by the native population, who used different kinds of weapons than the Vikings had ever seen. This caused the Vikings to panic, and they started to run away in confusion. But Freydis didn't give up so quickly. Instead, Freydis grabbed a weapon from one of the dead Vikings, tore her top, and boldly challenged the natives to a fight. The natives were so shocked by her fearless move that they quickly ran away, and Freydis stood victorious. Incredibly, Freydis was pregnant at the time these events happened, making it even more amazing. Now that you know, when you think of the Vikings, you can picture fierce women warriors who were just as strong and brave as the men.